Hey you guys, what's up? I'm Medua, and I actually did it again. First place in Hypixel Skyblock Bingo 2 times in a row now. Bingo in Skyblock is finished by completing 20 personal tasks that change with every month. And ever since I found out that bingo cards now actually have a placement engraved on it, my main goal was to get first place. And I actually did it last month. And if you haven't seen the video on that, I'll leave a link right up here. But after getting first place, my goal was kind of complete. So when the March bingo card released, and you were able to see all the different tasks you had to do, I actually wasn't even sure if I wanted to speedrun again, as I wasn't only super sick at the time, but it also had one particularly annoying task with them, Gunpowder Collector. Now last bingo had pretty simple tasks, and one thing I spoke about was the speedrun ability, as the speedrun is super dependent on the bingo card. And here we have the perfect example of something that I would call a speedrun killer, as it's something you can't manually grind for, and therefore it's heavily reliant on minion usage. But since the video blew up like it did, thank you very much by the way, I really appreciated the feedback, I had no other choice than to speedrun the unspeedrunnable bingo of March 2024. And let me tell you something, especially towards the end, things got pretty crazy. So jumping right in, just like last time, I used my perfect bingo start, which I actually also finally made a video on, linked up here if you're interested, to get set up with the basics. I also already prepared potions before the bingo even started, as I didn't want to rely on public splashes. Since like I already said, the Gunpowder Collector task was a speedrun killing task, and it's heavily reliant on minions, that was my ultimate goal from the get-go. Right after preparations were done, I went to the desert, farmed up only 5 mining levels, and went straight into the deep caverns to farm up gunpowder. And here, it was super helpful to have friends running around in their Aurora armor to spawn particles around mobs, at least for them, no matter if they're invisible or not. And since sneaky creepers were invisible to me, it was super useful to have someone show me where they are. It was still a bit of a struggle, but it made getting the 50 required gunpowder to unlock the creeper minion much easier. Right after I got the collection, I started crafting creeper minions, and I also completed my very first task, pair up. After that, my main focus was to have a decent minion setup for the next 2 hours. And this was because I already knew that I was aiming for the catalyst, which was especially hard to aim for, as summoning eyes, where dragon fights are an easy way to pick up crystal fragments, were super inflated because just days prior, the new alpha update was announced, so nobody was doing dragons. So the only way to actually get crystal fragments for catalysts were zealots with chests and a super low drop rate, or golem fights. And not only that, you had to rank in at 5th place or higher in the entire golem fight to actually get a single fragment. So now the strategy was to get a decent minion setup, which I did, and the first couple of hours I wanted to use cheese, which is basically a worse catalyst, but it had one cool aspect: it was obtained by killing rats, and rats have a tiny chance to drop a rat pet. This would end up making the run much easier, as if you'd get one, you'd be able to skip one of the pets for pet hoarder. And right as I was about to stop going for cheese, as I had enough, I actually dropped one. Then, since at that time my main goal was still the catalyst for now, I started working on combat level to reach the end. And since the pet hoarder task was still in the back of my head, I went for arachne and spider kills to level up my combat, whilst also having the chance of dropping yet another pet, the tarantula pet. But sadly, before I dropped the pet, I reached level 12, which meant end island access, and I immediately went into the end and started my long grind for the catalyst. A couple of minutes in, a friend of mine already found the very first golem, but if you remember, you had to place 5th place or higher, which I obviously didn't have the damage for. This made me then work even harder to acquire the damage needed, and I farmed up the endstone collection with nest endermites, as each one of them drops 1 enchanted endstone, which accounts for a total of 160 endstone in the endstone collection. And right after checking up on my minions again, I finally gotten my very first crystal fragment, and with that, the very first catalyst. Now that I had the collection and also the knowledge that I can deal enough damage, the focus then shifted, namely into minions. As the Gunpowder Collector task was the main task of the bingo, it was obviously the one task that'll take the longest. I kinda pushed everything else to the side and decided to focus the first 2 hours of the bingo solely onto this task. I then started crafting, and my goal were 12 minion slots. This sounded a bit crazy to me, especially since it actually was, but I knew that every 1 minion I placed is less gunpowder I have to grind for by hand. That's when an almost 2-hour loop of crafting minions and getting warped into stage 5 golem lobbies to try to get crystal fragments began. In the meantime, I also got 4 more tasks completed: skill average, Minion Machine, Sightseer, and also love is all around. I also opened up the garden and cleaned out the first plot, as even that I know that just farming the wheat in the hub is a preferred option for some people, I don't like competing with others about crops in the hub, and the garden just makes it much more chill. Right around this time, I also had something very interesting happen to me. I dealt almost 400,000 damage on the golem fight and actually placed 2nd place. I can't really explain why this happened, and it also happened a couple of times after this, but this guaranteed me some well-needed crystal fragments. About 3 hours after I started the bingo, I then had 11 minion slots, where now almost all of them were running on catalysts, or at least cheese. I then also had the eggs ready to craft the chicken head, and since I didn't want to waste a minion slot on a chicken minion slowly collecting raw chicken collection, I replaced it with a creeper minion and farmed up the collection by hand. From then on, I finally started going for other tasks. The next task I went for was Slayer, and since I still didn't have a tarantula pet yet, I went for the tarantula slayer. And luckily enough, a couple of minutes in, I finally got it, the tarantula pet, marking 3 out of 12 pets. I completed Slayer and actually also went for the tarantula level 5 as it rewarded me with a free tarantula minion and with it a free unique minion counting towards minion slots. After that, I then quickly got 2 easy tasks, Eagle-Eyed and also Lynx. Then I went mining, and since none of the tasks in this month's bingo actually require you to enter the dwarven mines, I actually decided to probably for the first time of me playing bingo not even enter the dwarven mines. Since some of the tasks, especially minions, required me to mine either way, I then went for reinforced Reforger, which I gotten pretty quickly. I also acquired a Petsitter task by collecting my uncommon bee pet, which I upgraded at Cat an hour prior to this, marking my 4th pet. I then got back into mining and worked on an hour in business task. After that, I went back into the garden, working a bit on wheat to then get straight back into minion crafting. Then I finally unlocked the 12th minion slot, which was basically my goal at this point. I also unlocked the rock pet in the meantime, marking 5 out of 12 pets. Then I had my first kick, almost 5 hours in, but it still felt really awkward just sitting there. Getting kicked in a speedrun really sucks, let me tell you. After the kick, I then started working on the Birch collection until my friends joined me to get the high score task, completing floor 1 in dungeons with a score of 230. And in the meantime, I also completed Esteemed Enchanter by collecting a tier 6 enchantment book from the dungeon chests. And since it was pretty close, I also got Bedazzled and then went back into foraging, namely Birch, farming to acquire 1 more slot, basically even going 1 slot above my previous goal. Shortly after that, I went back into the garden, farming wheat again. Right until, again, a kick. It's so frustrating during a speedrun, and since that's not enough, I went back into the garden after the kick, gotten my advanced garden hoe, and got kicked yet again. I can't tell you how frustrating this is. So after that kick then, I got myself 2 more pets, the owl and the grandma wolf pet, marking 6 and 7 out of 12, and finished up the wheat minion, upgrading it to tier 11 and completing the task hard worker, and just shortly after it, also completing wheat collector. Then I went back into foraging, farming birch once again, and in the meantime also trying to catch all the golems that my friends threw at me. This was honestly pretty crazy, as even though the help of my friends was amazing and saved me a ton of times on searching for golems, it was a pretty hard task swapping lobbies and trying to keep focus but getting pulled out of your zone every couple of minutes for hours upon hours. But I also, since I hadn't dropped one yet, set myself a goal of farming up a couple of endermen every time I joined a golem fight, which turned out to be a lucky thing to do, as I then finally, after hundreds of enderman kills, finally dropped an enderman pet, making it 8 pets. Right after this high though, I hit another low, getting kicked once again. But after this kick, I luckily had a pretty great run, right until I reached Birch Wood Collector, which I mainly did by using a golden axe and the especially on Birch helpful jungle axe. I broke the laying logs with the golden axe and farmed the surrounding standing trees with the jungle axe. Since at this point I wasn't quite done with the Lumberjack task though, and I still had a ton of minions without storages, I used the remaining foraging XP needed to farm up some medium storages for the minions. And this then also rewarded me with the task Lumberjack. I then only had 2 goals left, Pet Hoarder and the horrifying Gunpowder Collector. At this point, which was already 10 hours into the bingo, I only had 17,000 gunpowder collection, but 13 catalyst fueled minions. I decided to go for the Pet Hoarder task next and started working on the enchanted egg collection. In the meantime, and especially during the whole birch farming process, I laid eggs upon eggs with the chicken head to not have to rely on a chicken minion. And when I finally unlocked the enchanted egg, I almost had enough for all the pets required. So then I started crafting. The pig pet, which I already had the materials for, 9 out of 12. The rabbit pet, 10 out of 12. The bat pet, which was an absolute limit test to my shift key, and not only getting me closer to the pet hoarder task, but it also actually got me 1 more last minion slot, marking 14 minion slots, which is crazy to think about after not only 12 hours of playing on a new profile, especially since my actual goal for it was 12 from the beginning. And then, last but not least, finishing it all off with the famous cherry pet, marking 12 out of 12, we're done with Pet Hoarder. So what now? We're done with the entire bingo, except the speedrun killing gunpowder task. At this time, I had around 25,000 gunpowder collected and 14 fully catalyst fueled gunpowder minions, whereas almost all of them were level 5. I also had no real path to follow on, but through a quick brainstorm, luckily 3 things came to mind. Grinding creepers on the private island by building a dark room and simply relying on luck that creepers spawn for you to kill them, but this idea actually didn't really have a chance, and a major reason for that is another video I've been working on, namely about island best bestiary, which made me actually instantly scrap this idea. This actually also gives me a great transition into letting you know that if you're interested in the video and you don't want to miss it when it comes out, and or you're interested in more of my content in the future, then it's totally free to subscribe, and if you're still here and you're enjoying the video, then I'd really appreciate a like. But moving on, the second thing that came to mind were sneaky creepers. Just like in the beginning of the bingo, one way to obtain gunpowder is by killing sneaky creepers in the deep caverns. This though is, like I already said, reliant on other people, as you won't really contribute to your gunpowder collection much if you're just randomly running around, hitting air and praying that you hit a creeper. And since sneaky creepers would rely on other people either way, this brings us to the last and craziest method of them all, method 3, wither specters. It was pretty obvious that relying on your friends probably is the best way to solve this problem. And since at this point I already had a ton of friends with me in the call, supporting me along the way, actually here goes a huge shout out to you guys. This, and especially this, was absolutely impossible without you, and that's why the decision was made that it's probably the fastest method to actually grind out Crimson Isle access on the first day of bingo and farm up the rest of the gunpowder by hand using wither specters. And this actually then marks the start of the craziest 5-hour rush to beat and speedrun an unspeedrunnable bingo. 3 hours after grinding out thousands of endermen, getting kicked even more and dropping more enderman pets than I could have ever asked for, marking the previous enderman pet dropped kinda useless, we finally arrived on the Crimson Isle. Now after 15 hours into playing this bingo and already having 39,000 gunpowder collection, the final showdown began. And since this was super improvised, we just started testing and quickly found the perfect strategy, which required a party of 5 people, and at this point there was only one direction left to go for. One person simply warping us into new lobbies once we killed all the wither specters, 3 people with a gyrokinetic wand grouping up all the wither specters for me to simply hit them with a super cleaver and to get loot share on the gunpowder, and lastly one person with a Hypixel Enchanted with looting 5, giving the best chances for loot sharing not 1 but actually 2 gunpowder per wither specter. Grinding out gunpowder by hand is an absolute stupid thing to do, but it was insanely enjoyable, especially through the help of my friends, and it made it feel like a school group project. And in the end, as I finally finished up the Gunpowder Collector task, there's only one thing left to say. Not I, but we got rank 1 in bingo.